Today is March 13th. It's 5:40 p.m. We're going to be starting the Public Safety Code Enforcement and Neighborhood Empowerment meeting. If I can have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. I'm Juan Villegas, Vice Chair of the committee, and with me present is Councilmember Benavides. The chair is running a few minutes late, so we'll announce when he arrives. Can I have... we're going to open up public comments for the moment. If I can have Miss Connie Hamilton come up to the microphone. Very good. She has the answer to her question, and thank you very much. Ms. Irma Macias, you can come up to the microphone for public comment. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Irma Macias. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And the item I have is not in the agenda, and it concerns the runabouts in the neighborhood. They're not working for us. They need to have stops because people is not respecting, and it's causing a lot of trouble. Hopefully you can help me with that. It's 1230 South Shelton, so you have at least 4 or 5 down Northern Shelton and around Willets or Bishop. So if you please assign someone to have something like a study right there, and hopefully they find another solution because it's not working for us. As it is, they have 4 speed bumps in a block, which I don't understand why they have to go and do the runabouts. They never ask us, as I am a representative for the Piccolo in Mid-City, and I was never called when they placed those changes in that street specifically. Hopefully you can take responsibility in that one, because there's a lot of problems with the residents. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Mr. Peter Katz, our last speaker.
Good evening. I'm Peter Katz, President of the ComLink board that oversees all 64 neighborhoods in the city of Santa Ana, and I just want to personally welcome the new chief of police on board, and the neighbors are looking forward to working with you and helping make our neighborhood safer in the city. I went to your swearing in, and it was very moving, and I enjoyed meeting you and your family, and I want to welcome you aboard, and I think you'll do a wonderful job for the city. So that's my comments. And I want to thank this committee. The chair is not here, but the chair had the courage to shake this committee up, and so for the last year, it's been drifting, and so hopefully we can make up for lost time on the issues that are really facing this city. So I'm looking forward to working with this subcommittee because they're tackling the real issues that are facing the city. Public safety is the #1 problem in the city. It always has. It's in every city, and now with the economic situation the way it is, we're finding that people losing their homes out in the streets, and these are causing problems in the neighborhoods, affecting our businesses and affecting our community. So we all need to find new and creative solutions outside the box. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we will close the public comments. We're going to go straight to the agenda items. #1, if I can get a motion.
Move the approval of minutes for January 9th.
And I will second that. That takes care of item #1. Item #2 is the Santa Ana Municipal Code regarding loud noise. We have Acting Deputy Chief Kaminsky presentation.
Thank you very much, Council Member, City Manager. Today we're going to have a discussion about Santa Ana Municipal Code Section 10-153, which specifically speaks to loud and raucous noise. The code in and of itself reads, it's unlawful for any person to cause, allow, or permit the emission or transmission of any loud or raucous noise from any sound-making or sound-amplifying device in his possession or under his control upon any private property. That also applies on public streets, alleys, sidewalks, thoroughfares, also upon any public parks or public places or property therein. Here's where it gets interesting. The words loud and raucous noise as used herein mean any sound or any recording that is amplified or increased by any electronic, mechanical, or other device to such volume, intensity, or carrying power as to be, keyword, unreasonably interfere with the peace and quiet of other persons within or upon any one or more such places or areas, or as to unreasonably annoy, disturb, impair, or endanger the comfort, repose, health, or safety of persons. The California Penal Code speaks to Section 415, which is disturbing the peace. When law enforcement officers engage in trying to address disturbing the peace types of issues, 415 cannot be enforced by an officer because an officer's peace cannot be disturbed. That's why we continually have to seek out our residents to ask them if they are willing to sign a private person's arrest for violation of 415. It was because of our residents' unwillingness to sign those citizen arrest type of engagements that we as a city came up with SAMC 10-153. Let's face it, nobody wants to sign a citizen's arrest against their neighbor. We all have to kind of live and get along. So SAMC 1053 took the responsibility off of the residents and put it squarely on the shoulders of law enforcement. However, the unreasonable terms within this sometimes come into play as to what is reasonable or what is not. The code is currently difficult to enforce, and we'll have a discussion about why it is difficult to enforce and what some concepts I have which might help with that. But our current practice as far as the Santa Ana Police Department, on our first call, patrol officers respond out to an area where loud music or loud noise may be occurring. Again, when we get the call for service, it may be to a specific address or to the general area. And then we'll go to the location that we think has the loudest noise. It is not unusual for us to go to a street and find 3 or 4 loud parties going on at the same time. So we generally go to the loudest one, call back the complaining party, and see how we did. Once we go and we arrive at the scene, we have to make an assessment of how loud is the volume. If we find that we believe the volume is excessive or what we would call unreasonable, we'll make contact with the responsible party who's having the party. This, again, can be a fairly difficult concept. When you walk up to a party and say, who's in charge? If you're there for the party, everybody's in charge. If the cops show up and want to know who's in charge, nobody's ever in charge of the party. Which makes the first contact difficult. However, we will make contact with somebody who says that they're in charge of the party, and we routinely make contact with either the DJ, the band, or whatever it is that's making the noise. Ask them to cease and desist. Usually, and for the most part, our efforts are met with compliance. We note in our CAD system something called PAWC, parties advised, will comply, and then we leave. I know you'll all find it incredibly difficult to believe, but after the police leave, sometimes the parties get turned back on again. I know. Stranger things have happened. However, if we do, in fact, have a return call, we will go out there a second time and again try to make contact with that responsible party. It was fairly difficult to find the person in charge of the party the first time the cops showed up. It's virtually impossible to find out who's in charge of the party the second time the cops showed up. Because everybody knows when the cops show up the second time, we're looking to give whoever's in charge a ticket. and nobody wants a ticket. So we will end the party by whatever mechanisms we can, and generally the party ends after the second call for service. Whether or not we're able to issue a citation or not comes into play more often than not. So again, on the return call, it's very, very difficult to locate the person responsible. Voluntary compliance from the bands and DJs, sometimes they're willing to quit and go away. Other times they're belligerent and they don't want to end, because if they end, they're told they're not going to get paid for the evening. So we fight with that, and that often pushes us towards, do you have business licenses to operate within the city once you're talking about getting paid? And if you don't have a business license, that's generally how we'll have the band or the DJ stop their conduct. What makes this even more complex and complicated is when you go out to an area that is, we'll say, an apartment complex. It could be any number of parties occurring simultaneously in that center courtyard. And when we end one, it just kind of seems to get picked up by somebody else. Although this is a necessary tool for us to have within the city, enforcement is problematic. My recommendation: alter the Santa Ana Municipal Code 10-153 to additionally, not exclusively, additionally, hold the property owner responsible for conduct which occurs on their property. Officers would routinely continue to do the exact same work that we do in an effort to close the parties and minimize the disturbance to the neighbors. However, after finding that a party is in violation of SAMC 10-153 and finding the noise to be unreasonable and excessive, we would make notes within our computer-aided dispatch system, which would alert later staff that there was a violation that occurred. Subsequently, every couple days, staff would go in, pull all of the violations, and we would submit administrative citations to the property owners themselves. This concept generally functions best at locations that are rented out or large apartment complexes. However, there has been a tremendous amount of success in beach communities. I had first heard about this concept when I was either Huntington Beach or I think it was Huntington Beach, was having a huge amount of these parties where people owned houses and then they would rent it out for parties every single night. And the people involved in the parties didn't mind getting the citation from law enforcement because they were gone the next day. What they found most effective was holding the property owner responsible for the conduct on their property. Again, this is not an unusual concept. We use these same concepts in and around code enforcement every single day. If we're looking to alter the way that we address the community concerns to one of the highest responded to calls for service we have in this city, this is my best recommendation of considerations moving forward. And I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Councilmember Benavides, any questions, comment?
A few questions. Acting Deputy Chief, you mentioned it's one of the highest calls for service. Do we know roughly what that number is, either per month or if not now, it's just something
I can check into it, but I can tell you it's not one of the highest. It is the highest call for service that we have, disturbing the peace-related calls for service.
Under the proposed recommendations, when would the property owner potentially be cited? After the second, as it is currently, after the second call, I would imagine?
Of course, that's open for your interpretation as to how you would like the law crafted. However, if it was me, there isn't a person in this city that doesn't already understand what this law is. There isn't a property owner in this city that I believe doesn't understand what the implications of having all of these parties is all the time. It would be my recommendation that if we have to go out there one time, that the property owner should be held accountable. However, that's your decision, sir.
Another question, do we know what the fine would be?
So administrative citations would be $100 for the first offense, $250 for the second offense, and $500 for the third offense per city policy.
And it's per offense on a one, on a given day, or is that?
So it would be
General.
cumulative. We would look to pull the call for service and then submit the administrative citation. I'm not sure if you're aware of how we do the alarm ordinance, but I would make this very akin to the alarm ordinance. You get 1 or 2 passes on the alarm ordinance, and then after the third time, you're fined or you have to pay for the law enforcement response to a false alarm. I would look to have this be something like that you would get 1 or 2 freebies a year, and then we'd keep track of that. And then after that, you'd be subject to fine.
And then another, are there specific areas in the city, or do we have problem properties or problem areas? You mentioned beach communities, for example, where you have daily or weekly rentals, where that is imagine kind of a higher area of offense, if you will. Or do we have certain areas that have been mapped out or identified in the city?
I would say that some areas in the city have more of these calls for service, based more on population density than anything else. However, this problem exists everywhere in the city as far as people complaining about the loud parties. It is everywhere.
Thank you for some of the feedback. Believe it or not, I'm one where the parties and the noise, it doesn't bother me personally.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I see it as, and I get plenty of them around my house, my neighbor behind me, and I see it as free entertainment and music. I'm not paying for the band, but I get a chance to listen to it. So for me, it works. I'm probably one in the minority, but I enjoy it. My wife is another. It's another story. So I want to keep the windows open. She wants to close them. So anyway, little issue at home that we deal with when we have a party next door. However, I do understand that I am in the minority. I think most people, generally speaking, are not necessarily too excited when their neighbors have a loud party, DJ, band, and such. If we were to move forward, I definitely would advise the council, my colleagues, to consider some type of middle ground, whether it be similar to what we have currently, waiting for the second call, and or doing this a couple of options, a couple of kind of freebies, using the term that you mentioned, similar to the way the alarm response it currently is carried out. I was asking if there are problem areas. 'Cause I'm wondering if there is a way, if there are specific target areas within the city, if there's a way to zero in and address things in there versus having it be a blanket citywide solution to a localized problem. Mm-hmm. That was my reason for that question. And then I'd also be curious to hear at some point. I don't know if at this point, if the assistant city attorney is ready to address give any kind of from the legal standpoint as far as enforcement or anything of that sort that we might need to be aware of, or if at a subsequent time there might be some background information as to anything we might need to consider from a legal standpoint, enforcement standpoint. Those are some of my initial questions and feedback right now for staff.
Thank you, Councilmember Benavides, and the chair, Councilmember Tinajero, is here, so I'm going to hand the meeting. He will run the meeting now, and I will. I have some comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So,
go ahead.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay. Let's see. I know we had a problem with the officers logging information in the CAD, and I know it was addressed a while back. And was that addressed again? It was? Okay, to make sure that we cover putting down information in the CAD. And regarding like the difference between the alarms, when you start charging people for the alarms, I know when it rains and when it's windy, we get more alarms.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that no freebies other than one warning. Then you go back and then you can cite them. And I believe in citing a property owner because we also address this. We address other issues in apartment buildings that have problem tenants the same way. So we should probably deal with this that way. Giving someone a warning, great. I understand, and then they know they can be fined. But this thing continues to happen because no one's really enforcing it. And Chief, I know we spoke about this, about the music car that we had in the past. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes.
We call it the music car, right?
Yeah, we call it a disturbance 415
Party crasher.
The party
Party
crasher
car,
car. And so several years ago, we had I think upwards of 8+ officers citywide, particularly on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's all they did. And there was more than enough calls for service, as Deputy Chief says, for them to work their entire shift and go from call to call to call. So currently, based on staffing, we don't have that in place. I look to staff field operations patrol, which is frontline response first, and then we build around that any support structure. The few directed patrol officers we have, they're essentially spread throughout the city, primarily working during the day. We can't work them at night, but it's a concept that works when some of the shifts, swing shift and then graveyard, when they have enough staffing and they're fully staffed on the shift, we do put 2 officers in one car. What that does for us is we're able to respond to these types of calls for service a lot more efficiently because this is a 2-officer call, no matter what type of disturbance it is. So we're able to do that. But the designated team identified, we don't have that in place, at least today.
Thank you, Chief. Question for the Assistant City Attorney. So if we cite the property owner, what are our challenges in court?
It's hard to say at this point. We will need to fully vet what the mechanism would be to hold the property owner responsible, but it's no different than some of our other municipal code violations. One thing that I want to point out is that Santa Ana Municipal Code 1-8 does allow any violation of the code to be designated as a misdemeanor. That allows for up to 6 months in jail or a $1,000 fine. So, and the section 1-8 specifically says that could be used in lieu of or in addition to an administrative citation. So, oftentimes if the property is owned by a corporate entity, such as a partnership or some type of a commercial association, sometimes it's difficult to hold these folks accountable because there's different kinds of corporate entities or structures. So we would have to look into some of the other cities that have this type of ordinance that holds the property owners responsible and fully vet those issues legally as we move forward with any kind of revisions to the code that the council requires.
Thank you, ma'am. My final comment is that if we don't take this serious, then the residents aren't going to, the citizens of the communities, they're not going to take it serious. Well, why call if they just, they come out repeatedly and give them a warning and then nothing happens. So we want them to believe in us that if we call, they're going to come out, you get one warning. If not, hey, well then, you get the ticket. And possibly to the property owner also, if you can't find who runs it, because I know everyone says, hey, I'm just visiting for some reason. So it's a little tough, but thank you, Deputy Chief. Thank you, sir. And our Assistant City Attorney. And Mr. Chair, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Then let's go to item 3, update on dispensary map.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. In front of you, you should have a copy of the map that's now projected on the PowerPoint slide above. And for members of the audience, there should be copies of the map over here on the credenza if you're interested in it. This map shows the current commercial cannabis retail establishments that are licensed and operating as of today. There are 18. You will see in the right-hand corner, east of the 55 freeway, are the 2 pending facilities. They are not yet open, but we are not. We are waiting for them to open. But as of February, we had reports that all 18 were operating all during January of that year. So it's an excess, and we got some preliminary numbers on their sales back. So anyway.
Any questions?
All right.
I guess I'm unclear as to, are we looking, this is just an informational item, or is there any type of change that's being recommended?
No, there's no change. This was
Okay.
a request of
Okay, so then
information on what was operating by the end of last month.
Okay.
So this is where we are.
Perfect. So,
Councilmember Benavides, I think, if I recall correctly, a member of the community had indicated that it would be their preference that we have such a map on our cannabis website.
okay, perfect. Yeah, so I remember from the minutes that was captured. At this point, is this map yet public and available, like on our website anywhere in the city?
It will be
Department?
put on the cannabis portal.
Okay.
Yes, updated. There's currently a map, but this will be updated if it hasn't been already.
Okay, so what, is there a difference between what's there now and this one?
This
or
is the
just
latest.
the latest as to what's operate, what's,
Right.
okay. So we do show an M1 and M2 zone. I guess the only thing that I think would be helpful. Okay, so it does, maybe it is clear. Zoning areas suitable for collectives. It's in essence either M1 or M2, and either of those shaded, kind of purple shaded areas. Is there
Yes.
just a difference between the two?
The
shading, or it's just the zoning, but they're allowed
It
in
is
either
the
of those
zoning.
ones?
It depends on the zoning. The darker is the M2 and the lighter is the M1. We've also taken out any areas that would be not included because they are within 1,000 feet of a sensitive use. So there may be M1 or M2 zoned areas that would not be eligible for cannabis use to locate on them.
Okay.
In addition, you'll also see, you will see we had previously had on the map the Heritage Village project was included, but there is a this reflects our current policy that will be enacted as part of the new testing ordinance, which will say that these are the areas that were established by Measure BB. And so as a result, that will give some certainty to the people wanting to invest in these businesses, as opposed to fluctuating depending on zone changes that we may adopt in the future.
Okay, so we're at this point we're not making any changes to the BB adopted zone. Is that
To the, yes. So those zones that were eligible at the time that Measure BB was adopted are the zones that are shown on that map,
Okay.
those available areas.
Okay. So the area there, Alton and Red Hill, it essentially that's not what's in white there. That's not a commercial zone. Is that?
No, it is, but it's affected by residential zone properties that would be adjacent in Irvine or
I
in
see.
our property,
Okay.
in our city.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for preparing this, putting this
All right.
together,
Thank
making it
you.
available.
Any other questions? Okay, then let's move on to item 4, Chief Strategic Plan and Policy, or Policing Philosophy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, the next two items, number 4 and 5, are just informational for the board and everyone present and the public. So as part of my transition and taking over the police department as the chief, two components that I will look to put in place. They will take several months to develop and finalize. The first is a strategic plan specific to the police department. This is not intended to compete with the city's overall strategic plan, but more specifically to delineate in writing and drill down on how it is we're going to deliver policing services moving forward. So I figure this is about a 6-month process or so. The next one is the policing philosophy. Every police department has a policing philosophy. It's, again, a statement on values, core mission, and how we deliver our police services. We have a policing philosophy in place today. I have it under review, and so that'll be input by various folks from the department at various levels in the organization, so that I get to hear from them, what the focus areas have been, should be moving forward. And I can share with you preliminarily that I will look to redirect and refocus the police department on community-based, community-oriented policing. So really the strategy is twofold. Traditional policing approach, which is the reason we exist in terms of responding, preventing, identifying where crime might occur and address that, traditional policing. And then community-based, community-oriented, and that's really engaging the public, having the opportunity and encouraging officers to get out of the police car, make one-on-one contact. They can have crime-specific conversations, general conversations. They can kick a ball with a kid. They can ask, what it means, for example, when a mural that's in our community gets tagged by gang members, what the implications are there. So that's what we'll concentrate on there moving forward. And we'll publicize this document, of course, at the appropriate time. Any questions on those two items before I move on to the next?
Chief Valentin, it's nice to be able to take off the acting. Chief, this is refreshing. I appreciate you bringing this forward. I appreciate you looking towards a future. It's being very intentional. Essentially, having a plan in place ensures that we have goals, outcomes, that we have direction. Both it instills trust in the public. It gives support direction to your staff, your troops, the folks out there who are carrying out the plan. So overall, it's a very positive thing. I'm looking forward to what will be forthcoming. A question and suggestion. I want to say about a year ago or so, we were going through started a process on surveying the community with regard to community policing. We brought in a higher education institution to be able to evaluate some of that, evaluate some of the assessment, the information that has been gathered. So the public at that point was, provided their input, feedback, and we're looking forward to what those outcomes might be. So I would ask that you would consider and incorporate. So one question that I had here is will there be opportunity for public input at some point or another, in some fashion, as you consider both of these items, strategic plan and policing philosophy, and again, some I think we might have already readily there and available, some of that data, and then public in general, and then opportunity perhaps for council to give some input as you look at these big picture items. I would welcome the opportunity to either there may be similar survey or something that you can just capture from the policy standpoint. So those are my kind of, I guess, dual question comment there, and if you have any response.
So absolutely. I intend to reach out to the community and hear from them, particularly on the strategic plan, because it's a more holistic understanding of where we are today and not really operate on assumptions. One of the things that I did as a deputy chief in operations is actually when you go to a community meeting and get to hear firsthand what the issues are rather than operate on assumptions. So similarly here, that's the intent. The policing philosophy is the mechanics on the overall, the umbrella piece on how we're going to affect that service. But on the strategic plan, the city of Riverside, Chief Sergio Diaz did a brilliant job, in my opinion, on laying out that framework in terms of how we're going to police our community moving forward. So I have a great relationship with him and others, and that's the intent there. So there will be absolutely opportunity for the community to provide input. Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other council members have a comment? Chief, congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you.
Something that was brought up to our attention, Officer Kaminsky, I think, is still here, right? He's so thin, I can't see him anymore, you know? But we talked about this about a year ago, I want to say. We did a report that was led by him regarding policing and staffing. And right now we operate on a 3-day work week, 12-hour shift. And so one of the things that came out of that report was that if you did a hybrid of 3 and 4, we have more officers on the street. So I think something that we have to do as a city and as a department is that we are in negotiations with the Police Officer Association. We want to come up with a good contract for them. We are also talking about ways to be creative to bring more funds into the city so that we can not only give them a nice package in the future, but also to be one of the top organizations county-wide to bring in the top officers, to recruit the top officers here. In order for us to do that, so let me pause for a second. So let me pause on that. There is a gun debate going on right now because of what happened in Fort Lauderdale, and Broward County. And one of the things that the President of the United States a few weeks ago said was, it doesn't make sense for an individual who's 18 years old to be able to go into a gun shop, buy a gun, or not be allowed to buy a gun, but they can go in and buy a semi-automatic weapon. And so one of the thoughts was to increase the age limit from 18 to 21 to buy a weapon. Makes logical sense. It does not make any sense for someone to be able to buy a semi-automatic weapon at 18 but not be allowed to buy a handgun, right? So any logical person sees that. So we obviously know there's special interest involved and there's pressure there where the president will then backtrack, okay? So what I'm saying is that law, in my opinion, is a flawed law. If you're going to allow someone to buy a semi-automatic weapon at 18, might as well just let them buy the gun. But in order to protect our society, we should increase it to 21. We do everything else that takes an enormous amount of responsibility, like alcohol. We wait for you to be 21. So people see the political pressures that happen, even though logic tells you this is the right way to go. So logic tells us that if we can have more officers on the street by a hybrid program and we can save money for the city, that is something that we need to take a look at. So I would like to ask for you to go back and take a look at this, because one of the things that I've always appreciated about Officer Kaminsky, and this has been his reputation throughout the entire time that I've been on this council, is if you want an honest response that's non-political, go to Officer Kaminsky. And so I've always respected him for that. So when he came in here and gave us that presentation, what I was advocating for was a 5-day work week. What I was advocating for was flawed, and he demonstrated that. But this hybrid showed that we would have more officers on the street. So I just want to ask that be something to take a look at as we move forward. Now, I'm one council member, but I think as a whole, if we can have more officers on the street, and in the meantime, this council starts to work with businesses to find ways to bring in more revenue so that we could also pay officers at a higher rate, I think it's a win-win for everyone. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
We will take a look at that and bring it back.
The only,
Quick comment, Mr. Chair.
really quick, if I may, Officer, Councilman Villegas, it's acting deputy chief, Kaminsky. So we took him down a few notches, but.
I apologize, Acting Deputy Chief Kaminsky.
A quick question, so clarification. So you have to be you can buy a rifle, shotgun at 18. Handgun is 21.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into the debate of
That's
this,
what I'm just
but
saying, but,
the fact is
that's the
that
fact.
people can still go in different states. People can still go in and buy a semi-automatic weapon at 18.
Yeah, it's illegal to bring across state line.
Correct, but that's irrelevant. What I'm talking about is a law that was just a bill that was just passed in Florida that changed that loophole. So all I'm saying is that I was saying that all I was trying to make a comment on is it doesn't make sense for an individual to be able to buy a gun in some states at 18, but or not be able to buy a gun at 18 in some states, but be able to buy a semi-automatic weapon. All I'm saying here, we're not talking about a gun debate here. What I'm talking about is logical sense about laws and how they operate. And so where I'm bringing this up, the reason I'm bringing that up as an example is Officer Kaminsky gave us a great report about the fact that I don't think any resident in Santa Ana would oppose having more officers on the street to have a quicker response time if we went to a 3-4 shift. That's it.
Understood.
Okay. Anything else?
But
you want to say?
I concur with you, Mr. Chairman. For us to definitely look at all options. I think that's I believe not too long ago. It was a number of years back, but I think we did have that schedule. I want to say maybe 10, 15 years back. I'm getting old, so maybe it was a little while ago. But it's not outside of something that would be reasonable, because again, I recall us having that similar schedule. At this point, anything that we can look at, consider to be able to enhance public safety, give our staff the support and officers that they need out there to be able to execute, having a safer community makes sense. So let's consider all those options. Thank you.
Any other comments?
And Councilmember, if I may, you were real close. It was 17 years ago. I looked at it last year briefly, and it was the last time we had what we call 312, 412 patrol schedule was 17 years ago. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to?
I was just curious, Mr. Chair, is it possible for us to regulate gun sales here in the city of Santa Ana?
If I'm not mistaken, I think we have to go by state law.
Yeah, you got to go by
when it
state
comes to
law.
that.
Yeah.
I think we have to go by state law as well. We'll have to look at that. I know that some cities have imposed regulations on the sale of ammunition as a way to regulate, the access to, you can sell the guns. You can't regulate the guns, but you can regulate the ammo. We can look at that.
Okay, great.
Get a
Thank you.
response back.
All right, we're going to go on to item 5, please. Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5, again, is just informational sharing. The Orange County School of the Arts has approached us, and they are interested in establishing an MOU contract to essentially pay for the services of one police officer to be assigned full-time to their school campus. Back in 2010, I actually was involved in setting up a very similar structure with Santa Ana Unified. And so moving forward, last year, they served a notice to quit that service, and they've approached us. The unique piece here is that it would be a contract service in full. So salary, prorated for the equipment, vehicle, weapons, training, full cost. Sometimes when these agreements are established between entities, there isn't a true full cost. We've had conversations with the administration staff there at Orange County School of the Arts. They know what we bring to the table, a professional police service. I have a working relationship with their current administration who was in place back in 2010. They're excited at the opportunity. What it also does is it leverages our imprint here in our immediate downtown and Civic Center. We have an officer assigned to the campus full time. They understand and are supportive if we need to pull that resource to leverage an emergency incident near that we could do that, and vice versa. Of course, if there's an incident there on the campus, we could respond to assist as well. So I believe that it's a win-win. They had approached months ago, and of course, we still have the struggle and the ongoing effort to hire and recruit officers. But what it does is, again, it's a fully compensated agreement that would come before, if you all agree, to the entire council, and it would leverage resources both ways. And I think we also are working on a draft of the agreement.
Okay. Any questions from any of the council members?
Oh, just a comment. It sounds like a win-win. It sounds like it's a way for us to be able to have another uniformed officer present, being in the city, being paid for by another entity. Also ensures security for our students as well. And so it sounds like win-win across the board. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Go ahead, Councilmember Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can get an update on the police recruitment for the next meeting, that'd be great, just to find out where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I didn't realize that you and I were walking the halls of Saddleback High School at the same time.
Is that right?
Yeah, you graduated with.
We got to go offline here.
I was
way
asking,
too many stories coming out now.
I was talking to our county clerk, Hugh Wynn.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, he graduated with you. I said, really? He says, yeah. He says, he graduated with you. He says, I said, oh, cool. Then we're in good hands. Anytime we have a Saddleback Roadrunner, we're in good shape. All right. Well, I didn't see you at the reunion, though. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, I'm just teasing. Let's go to item 6, homelessness update.
So, with your indulgence, I'll go ahead and give an update on the Quality of Life team, what we call COLT, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Keika, who is our Homeless Services Manager, and she'll give you the homeless update. So, COLT, the Quality of Life team. This information is after 6 weeks of a pilot program. Over the last several years, the City of Santa Ana has seen an increased number of quality of life related complaints. These are not simply and specifically assigned or surround individuals experiencing homelessness. However, a large majority of them are. These complaints generally discuss or apply to municipal code violations, the storage of property on public and private property, as well as the improper uses of both public and private property. We've utilized various mechanisms that I'm aware of over time to try to address these concerns. However, in my opinion, this has been a disjointed effort. As an example, I received a call from the city manager's office one day about a problem we were experiencing over at the YMCA. I went over there to contact some individuals who had set up encampments there and asked them to leave, which they complied and did. I then asked for support from some other city entities to try to have them come out and clean up the debris and store some property that was left abandoned there. I tend to get along with everybody in the city pretty well. People will generally do quite a bit to help me out and make my dreams come true, we'll say. After I'd sat there for over 3 hours with nobody to help me, I got frustrated. I understand that frustration at my level, if I call and I can't get any help after 3 hours, it's got to be incredibly difficult for the average patrol officer or that average code enforcement inspector, that average public works employee, or that park and recs employee to be able to wait on the various different functions that we understand have to come together to solve some of these problems. Out of that frustration, I took that frustration to what Deputy City Manager Cortez has done a fantastic job of molding and creating, which is an interdepartmental team on homelessness that meets every single week. I took my frustration there and offered a concept that we referred to as COLT. And that was the bringing together of police, public works, park and recreation, code enforcement, our homeless liaison officer, as well as Orange County Mental Health Resources. Under the leadership and guidance of Deputy City Manager Cortez, he embraced the idea and actually, through quite a bit of discussions, got every single entity in the city to agree to put resources into this concept so that when we go from place to place, everything that's needed to solve a problem, to address an issue, all the way from servicing an individual who wants help out of homelessness, to the cleaning up of large encampments using huge construction equipment. Everything is there when it's needed to be there. This is designed to increase our efficiencies. But more so, it's designed to be responsive to our customer service needs. And over the last 6 weeks, we have seen an increased level of efficiency. We've been able to reach out, or have our general public reach out to us as an entity and be responsive within 24 or 48 hours to some things that would have taken us in the past numerous days and maybe weeks to even address. Because trying to get various different entities to work together on single problems, we all know how complex and difficult that can be. But this team manages to make it happen every single day. As examples, during the first 6 weeks of this program, the team has contacted well over 344 individuals. A majority of those are individuals currently experiencing homelessness. Out of those 304, 13 actually requested services. They were willing to accept services. When you look at that number, it's staggering based on the amount of people that we contacted. Out of the 13 people that requested services, each and every one of those was given some type of service, whether they were plugged into a mental health system and or whether they were housed at the courtyard, or whether they were actually plugged into some form of either long-term or short-term housing. But everybody who comes in contact with this team who wants help gets help. Additionally, the team has responded to over 204 separate requests for some type of cleanup or addressing of a quality of life related issue. Now, the difference between the 204 and the 183, some of those complaints we sent patrol officers out to address. They were determined not to rise to the level of needing the quality of life team, so 183 of them were actually addressed by the COLT team itself. Property engagement, out of the 183 locations that the COLT team has been responsible to address, we've collected property at 61 of those locations. When you talk about the collection of property, it can be complex. We've already come through a lawsuit dealing with how we as a city store property that is abandoned, or the property that we store in conjunction with an arrest made by the police department. We have Connex containers that are full at City Yard and over at the stadium of all of the property that we are storing. And I'll answer any questions you might have before I turn it over to Ms. Hafsa.
Any council members? Councilmember Benavides?
Not a question, just a comment. I appreciate all the work that's going into this effort, this team. I think just the idea of having, there's only so much any one department can do, and I know that we have, on their own, each has their own full plates, levels of responsibilities, but there's so much more that we can do when we come together as a broader team. So I've heard nothing but very positive things about the efforts of this group, this team. In its essence is reflective of what we as a city and as a staff could do as we work more intentionally as a team. It's in essence looking at how we can better serve the city as a whole, customer service. So I think it just serves as a model. So I commend you, Deputy Manager, just the this team as a whole, just the concept, the idea, the willingness, and the support from the city manager to see this happen, having it come together. So, and that's nothing but good things. I just thank you for all your hard work and demonstrating this as a model again.
If I may just add, thank you, Councilman. If I just may add, Mr. Chair, this is really a best management practice that we sort of stumbled on. There was a work study session through the police association of some sort.
Oh, yes.
That the chief and Deputy City Manager Cortez attended, and it turns out this is the best management practice that is also being performed at the City of Seattle, San Francisco, and now with our success here, the county just announced, they have a different name for it, but they just rolled it out last week at the city manager's luncheon. The CEO of the county announced that they're going to roll out within the next month or so. This service, this team, and they basically said, "We will go to your cities." They told all the city managers, "We'll go to your city if you invite us in." But it's basically the same model, and so it was nice to. They didn't, refer
Did
to
they
us.
credit us? They say thank you, Santana.
They did not, but imitation is the highest form of flattery, so we took it as a compliment anyways. I just wanted to let you know that this is sort of cutting edge.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Councilmember Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, Deputy Chief. So regarding the 204 numbers for the request for engagement, what were they asking for? What did you find was the most common request?
Transient encampments and then the debris associated with those encampments.
Okay, and so among the other people on the team, what were they contributing? I know we have code enforcement. What were they addressing?
So within the team concept, Park and Recs is responsible for all storage of property. Public Works is responsible for the cleanup and removal of any items that are not stored property. Code enforcement has been actually fantastic about dealing with properties where business owners may be allowing individuals to collect property, and it becomes an eyesore and a problem for the neighboring community. Code enforcement has been extremely effective in that, as well as trying to seek compliance from some of our non-partner railroad entities that are not as willing to assist and probably do what their fair share of cleaning some of their right-of-ways should be. Code enforcement has been very effective in that. Our homeless liaison officer is the one that is reaching out and speaking to all of the people that are there. And our mental health clinician, which again is part of the police department, has been fantastic in trying to determine what needs some of these individuals experiencing mental health issues, what needs they might have, and what services we may be able to plug them into.
Thank you very much. That's great news. And of the 6 containers that we have there, how long do we hold the property for?
Stored property is held for 90 days, and we just bought 2 more containers.
I went down there and I looked, and this was a while back. They're empty. I guess they must be full now.
Yeah, they're
great
bursting.
work, though. Great work. And code enforcement, I know I received a lot of phone calls and emails regarding the business owners allowing some of the folks to store their things, and yeah, it doesn't look very good. And next thing you know, you have a population hanging outside the business, even though he's allowing it, but kind of can't have that in the city. But thank you, Mr. Deputy Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember Villegas. Do we have any committee member comments?
If I can just add
Sure.
a little bit more to this, and then we'll get Ms. Keika to give us an update on homelessness, that the success of this team really lies within the individuals that comprise this team. So Acting Deputy Chief has been a true leader in helping us achieve these successes. Dedicated personnel from Public Works, Code Enforcement, Parks and Recreation, our homeless team, as well as our executive management teams. So City Manager, the Chief, and the different department directors for allowing us to compile this team and to reorganize or reshift some of these priorities to allow us to do this type of work. Because the different departments were already doing some semblance or something similar to what we're doing now, but they were operating in silos. So the concept was to bring them all together and address the issue as a team. That way you can solve the issue as you go and you visit these individuals who need assistance. The successes here, we've listed them as 13. It may not seem like a big number, but in this environment, 13 is a significant achievement. So I do want to commend staff for all their efforts.
All right, thank you for your work on that. Ms. Hafsa Kaka.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, and congratulations, Chief. And good evening, council members. Just really quickly, I wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Hafsa Keika, and I'm very honored to be part of Team Santa Ana as a homeless services manager. I've truly enjoyed working with our deputy city manager, our manager, and mostly the law enforcement here. I have a background in criminal justice and psychology at UC Irvine, and also a master's in social work, and I teach at USC best practices in the delivery of services to vulnerable populations. So that gives me a really good segue to the vulnerable population we're working with. First and foremost, I know that it has been echoed, but I will resonate it again. The law enforcement and the work that Chief Kaminsky and Corporal Montiel and the HEART team and everybody that's out there in the city of Santa Ana and also the Civic Center Plaza, I am so impressed. I come from Los Angeles, and that Los Angeles has 57,974 people that are experiencing homelessness. And the regional coordination in the 8 service planning area that happens there, one of the biggest gap is the law enforcement involvement. So to come here and see how well integrated law enforcement is truly impressive. And to piggyback off of what Chief said about the community engagement piece of the strategic plan is definitely something that I'm very excited for. Because when you're working with populations that are in the Civic Center, it takes a certain kind of compassion. It takes a best practice of harm reduction. And I've seen that in action as I've been out today and the past few weeks that I've been here. So in Los Angeles, I provided technical assistance and capacity building to over 200 public agencies that were receiving funds from the Joint Powers Authority, from HUD. And one of the things that I'd like to do here is work closely in collaboration with the county to increase the partnership, not only that we have been doing as a model city, as our manager said, with the Colts and how they're emulating, I think it's the chart or whatever the name is, but also to integrate the other cities into the efforts. We know Santa Ana is doing a lot in law enforcement, in affordable housing, in outreach, in the different practices such as Colt. And so being an individual and having this platform to speak on regional coordination is something that I'm very, very excited about. The other thing is the increased assistance to the different kind of populations. So not to compartmentalize, there's always anomalies. But when you're looking at homeless population, you're looking at the chronically homeless, the real chronically homeless, and then you're looking at individuals who are kind of in the middle, and then you're also looking at those who just need a lift up. So the federal government, through HUD, the Housing Urban Development, through the HEART Act back in 2009 that was passed, has the local entity of the Continuum of Care. Santa Ana, we are on the board of the Continuum of Care, so we are going to be working with different entities, philanthropic, United Way, different nonprofit agencies, faith-based agencies, and other government entities to help look at the coordinated entry system. This is a national best practice, and I provided oversight in the coordinated entry system in LA, so I'm really excited to ensure that there is a coordinated front, piggybacking off of what Robert had said. And so with that comes funds, and with that comes best practices. So really excited to begin to create a strategic plan with our interdepartmental team to execute all of that. And then lastly, like I said, mental health, substance abuse, medical health. lo and behold, there is that same wraparound best practice that happens. You know, I worked in Skid Row, and it's so amazing to see the cult around Parks and Rec and code enforcement and having this multidisciplinary team. In social services, you see that with a medical expert, with a mental health expert, with a substance abuse expert. And so really ensuring that the folks that are out there that are experiencing the most chronically homeless are able to get into housing. And speaking of that, I've been doing some lobbying as well, working with our wonderful Judson Brown, who's the manager of our affordable housing. Permanent supportive housing is the answer. When you're looking at folks that need a lift up, that, you know, just have 1 or 2 months rent, have some difficulty with jobs, that's rapid rehousing. You know, you could work through that, and it's it's hard, but it's not as hard as a person who is going through catatonic behavior, schizophrenia, bipolar, and come off and maybe a potential threat to society, right? And so with that being said, the most important thing is permanent supportive housing, because you can't just give someone a key and expect them to thrive in that environment. With that comes the supportive services. So I've met with our housing, I've met with representatives from the state on how to increase policies around permanent supportive housing as well. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a landscape of where the vision and the mission is. A lot of strategizing and utilization through regional coordination, through intensive case management, through supportive services, and on a macro level working with our local government entities as well as our federal government.
Thank you. And I apologize that I mispronounced your name. It's Keika?
It's Keika.
Keika, I knew
Hafsa
that.
Keika.
I was just testing you. I
Okay,
just wanted to see
great.
if you knew.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, welcome. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of great work, and you have some you have extensive background in this. So human capital is always a big thing on my list, and I'm glad that you're here with us. So thank you very much. Any other
I just
comments?
like to mention, you know, having Hafsa here, and thanks to our city manager and our city council for allowing us to have this position, she brings a whole different element to addressing homelessness in our community. It's an element or an area that we just did not have the expertise on, so I just want to thank you for that opportunity to have her here.
Great.
The other thing I wanted to share with this committee is that in that partnership and in terms of, you know, having a larger voice, Judson Brown, our housing manager, is the chair of an ad hoc committee, and I'll have Robert describe that. Also, Ms. Hafsa Keika has also landed on a committee with this. And at the last week's city managers luncheon, they were looking. This organization that the county has shaken up has spots for city managers as well from the different parts of the county. So at that meeting, I nominated Robert to represent us because he's the lead, you know, on behalf of my office. So he is going to get on this committee at another level, and I'll have him describe where everybody else. So you're going to have 3 people from Santa Ana in this organization that's going to shape policy and resource allocation for homelessness activities or homelessness prevention and all of that. So we're getting ourselves, you know, on these, and we did not have that. I think the last time that we had somebody on this board was
David Cavazos.
David Cavazos, and he's been gone for a while. So I'll let Robert explain where everybody else is placed.
Sure. So Hafsa, please let me know if I'm doing justice here. So Judson Brown serves as the chair of the Continuum of Care, and this is the committee that's going to be overseeing how the allocation of funding is spent throughout the county. He's going to be serving a 2-year term, and we are so excited to have him chair this committee and have a voice for Santa Ana. Part of that same committee, Hafsa Keika is going to be serving on the legislative or policy development ad hoc committee, so we're also going to have a voice sitting on that particular committee going forward. I have volunteered to participate as part of the Orange County City Managers Association Committee that will be meeting with the county as far as how we move forward in terms of addressing homelessness, and we actually had our first phone call yesterday that I participated in. In addition to that, there is a Commission to End Homelessness board. This is a board that's elected or appointed by the various supervisors. This past Monday, we submitted an application to nominate myself to be part and serve on this board. So we're hoping that between all of these different boards and commissions that we have a much stronger voice and address a lot of the situations that we have here in Santa Ana.
And I believe we will. Any other comments from any other council member? Okay, then I'm going to go to committee member comments. Anyone?
None tonight, Chairman.
No comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then what we will do is look at future agenda items. We're going to have the Arson and Fire Investigation Authority come in at the following meeting. And our next meeting will be set for May 8th, 2018. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.